Have we forgotten lessons of the American civilization? Well, Tom Del Beccaro hasn't. We'll explore his new book that delves into that topic on this episode of United Patriots Uprising with Gary Benford. I'm your host, Gary Benford. Thanks for joining us. This podcast is available at radioinfluence.com or wherever you get your favorite podcast. Hope you'll subscribe to it, leave a rating and a review. Also, you can find the video version at YouTube, Rumble, Conservative Television of America, the God, Family, and Country Television Network, and the Rose Unplugged Media Network. So you can find the video version there. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button, get the notifications every time the show airs. You know, one of the things that is so troubling to me is it doesn't look like we're learning from history. Like anybody that's looked at what happened to Cuba, anybody that looks at what happened to Germany, anybody that looks at what happened recently to Venezuela should be saying socialism, not on my watch, not in my lifetime. Yet there's a large swath of the country going down this rabbit hole. We have to stop this, people, while we still have time. And if you don't understand why it needs to be stopped, Tom Del Beccaro is about to set us all straight. You ready to find out? Well, let's get into it. He's an author, speaker, and political opinion columnist who's been seen all over television, all the political talk shows. He was a guest 3 times on this show when it was audio only. So now we get to see him. I am glad to welcome back to the show the author of the new book, Lessons of the American Civilization, Mr. Tom Del Beccaro. Tom, how are you?
I'm doing great. Good to see you again, a fellow Long Islander.
Yeah, you're in California, I'm in Long Island. It's different. It's a little bit safer here, but we have Hochul as the governor and everything's a mess, as you know. We were together at Rock the Red in South Carolina about 5 years ago, and we thought the world was totally out of control then. It is really out of control now. So tell us why you wrote the book and what the premise of the book is.
So my entire career has been based on trying to put things in perspective for people, current politics, also long-term history. What can we learn from the past? How can we apply it to the future? That's always been my goal. I started reading history books, believe it or not, as a young teenager, and Will and Ariel Durant wrote The Story of Civilization, which basically puts all of Western history into context. So what I did with this book is take sort of the lessons of history and apply it to the American civilization starting in the 1500s all the way up to about April, when my publisher told me to, if I didn't cut it off, they'd never get it done. So that's what I did. And I think it's particularly relevant because there's strong messages in the book related to freedom of speech and also the centralization of power in a federal government, which is always the sworn enemy of freedom.
I hear you. Now, one of your chapters is entitled The American Ideal. Well, what was the American ideal supposed to be and what's happened to it?
Well, civilizations are born with a purpose, and in the American purpose and ideal was democratization. And what I mean by that is America, starting of a civilization or a new government is often a pendulum swing away from what gone before. So America was subject to what? Centralized rule in a monarchy. And so what the founders did is create at the time, remember, at the time of the America, there was no working democracy or republic in the world. None. There hadn't been for centuries. We were coming out of the age of absolutism, which means the absolute power of kings. So what was going on in America with these founders? They created the broadest franchise in the history of mankind. That was their ideal. Ultimate, the most participation possible of people. Now, it wasn't complete, as we know at the time. Democracy is never complete. No republic ever started complete and ever finished complete either. So, but what they did do, the ideal of America was political and economic opportunity, and it started with that. But sadly, that is diminishing as we centralize power in Washington, D.C.
Yeah. Wow. You know, you have another chapter that I found very, very interesting, and this one should get a lot of attention. America at war with itself. And the thing that I thought about, a lot of civilizations, you can go back to Rome, you can go back to all kinds of civilizations from ancient time, and even move into part of the near present. A lot of civilizations weren't destroyed from or conquered from outside, they were destroyed from within. Is that kind of what's going on here?
Well, yes, actually, and I'm glad you brought that up. America was blessed by what? A continent that with two docile neighbors, one to the north, one to the south, and two huge oceans. The European continent, by contrast, was called the violent continent because of so many wars and invasions. So America was allowed to go on and develop and create enormous wealth. And in that process, America, around the 1960s, began to doubt itself. So civilizations are born in faith, in their very purpose and religion, and they die in doubt. And as what we see today is there's a huge percentage of Americans who no longer believe in the ideal, who don't believe America ever had an ideal. And that is what happens towards the end of civilizations. And so what you see is the tearing down of traditions just in front of our eyes. And traditions are to the civilization what guardrails are to a mountain road. If you don't have them, things go awry. And what you're seeing today is in the education system and in politics and even in our government, no longer a belief in an ideal. And that is a dangerous process.
Yeah. And we're seeing that right now, right here. You're seeing this country is very divided, people, as everybody knows that watches this show. Everybody knows this show is about stopping the Marxist communist takeover of America. That's my sole function. That's the only thing we concentrate on, Tom, and how it manifests itself. And you have a chapter on capitalism and socialism. And I'll just frame this way. One of the biggest things that has happened in my lifetime that I couldn't believe was the rise of Bernie Sanders. I could not believe there was such a thing as a Bernie bro. I couldn't even believe that Bernie Sanders picked up any traction. Now, I can understand it happening, but not in our lifetime. You know, and is this, I understand we go back to the Communist Manifesto, we go back to Gramsci and cultural Marxism. We know how they were going to do this. We know Obama kickstarted it, but it just seems after Bernie Sanders, now the word socialism and Marxism and even communism, I'm not going to say it's fashionable, but this stuff is here, and kind of break down that chapter. And boy, this is scary stuff.
Yeah, I'm with you. In our lifetime, I did not expect it to have this degree of currency or to have a presidential candidate right now say, we all need to end up in the same place. Well, actually, no, that's a bad thing in history. So what I do with the 10th chapter, which is America, Capitalism, and Socialism, is talk about it in historical context versus other civilizations and our own. And then we had a socialist party in this state, and those socialist parties always in history arrive after industrialization, after freedom, after wealth is created. Some do much better than others, but history, of course, and our education system miscasts them. Keep in mind that 80% of America's millionaires are self-made. They got no money from anybody, including John D. Rockefeller, by the way, whose father was a lousy drunk who abandoned his family, right? Mark Zuckerberg came here, his family had no money. Elon Musk came here with $2,000. America allows for initiative. Well, nevertheless, the Socialist Party emerges out of that because they see that some people are doing better than others. They disregard the fact that the middle class didn't even exist in history until capitalism came along. So that's what you see in American history. You see the industrialization, you see this enormous wealth. It's not distributed evenly, neither are our talents. You and I may well love history and speaking, but neither one of us are going to be the opening day pitcher in the World Series because that's not our talent, right? I can't dunk. I don't know if you still have that ability, but we have different talents. And that's what makes America great, that opportunity to express these talents. By the same token, the American system allowed for Abraham Lincoln, who started in poverty, yet rose to change all of mankind. You don't have Abraham Lincolns in China. You don't have Abraham Lincolns in Russia, right? So what happens over time as this wealth builds, and then you come in with government education. Obviously, I call it government education because that's who's at the center of it. And what isn't taught in the classroom, I'm sure you remember this line from the book, what isn't taught in the classroom is forgotten in the culture. And so we don't have a system today that teaches world history, that teaches American history, the success of it, and the dangers of socialism. So over time, and also what I do in that particular chapter is talk about how government grew throughout U.S. history, how it provided benefits or programs to people, and we become, as a civilization, attached to government and think it's a force for good, forgetting its dangers. And so in the last 100 years, America has gone from the government has gone from about 9% of the economy to 35%. When you throw in regulations, it's in the mid 40s to almost 50%. People become attached to it. And then you have discussions where Michelle Obama can get on TV and say, government does everything for us. Yes, well, Jefferson warned us that the government can do to you in proportion to what it can do for you. And what is going on currently? Well, you have a presidential candidate who says out loud that Elon Musk has too much free speech. Well, free speech is the mother of democracy, and a republic. You cannot have either one of them without your ability and my ability to dissent from those in power. The moment that censorship starts is the beginning of the end of freedom. And so I discuss in that chapter how it is we got to this point where we had a vibrant First Amendment, and now we're here where we are today.
Yeah. And one of the most important things that you said was about people, you must understand about socialism. You must understand that government doesn't make money. Government spends money. And the only way, I want to make sure you caught this because Tom said this, but I want to make sure you understand the context of what this actually means so you can see what's going on in this election. They want to kill President Trump and say he's this, he's that, he didn't do this, he didn't do that. Let us come in with our socialistic ways and start redistributing wealth. You can only redistribute wealth if there is wealth. You can't have socialism in a poor country where there's nothing because there's nothing to pass around. And what they want to do, not only take the free speech from Elon Musk, but they want to take the money away from Elon Musk. They want to take it away from you, Tom, since you may have some, I don't, and to give it to somebody else. See, and that is not the freedom of this country that was born on Judeo-Christian values where you have not equal outcome, right? But we should have equal opportunity. And what is going on in this election now, since you segued into this? Tell people what we're up against and why they must be stopped.
Well, this could be the most important election someday as we look back at it on this battle for individual freedom. Because Kamala Harris has point blank said, as you well know, that it must be stopped, talking about the freedom of speech that an Elon Musk has. Now, she doesn't say that about government. She believes that government has the right to regulate or to moderate speech. And so how does this come about? Well, think about it. During COVID, the fact that so many Americans so easily genuflect to government demands or that big corporations We're willing, let's face it, as you and I know, they do business with government. They're regulated by government, so they bend to government. And this is how republics die. They die when the individual has less say than big interests. And what do I mean by that? Well, during the COVID crisis, you had Moderna and Pfizer had a much bigger say than you and I in public policy. You can make the argument that McDonnell Douglas has had a much bigger say in American policy than you and I. So the bigger government budgets become, the bigger deals they do with public employee unions who have a bigger say than you and I. And these big corporations, that is where republics begin to die. Because America succeeded because of a broad franchise where individuals had a say in government. They die at the end of the Roman Republic when that changes, where big government and handing out big money creates policy instead of the individual participation. And so this election is about two different visions. Trump the disruptor, the one who realizes that the DOJ and FBI have too big a say in who runs in politics, they shouldn't have any say, or Kamala Harris, who is a creature of government. And so this is why I say we're reaching an important and dangerous part in our civilization's history. And I talk about this in the book, The Lessons of the American Civilization. We've reached the point in our civilization where those in power are protecting themselves from us. They want our money, but not our 2 cents. They don't want us disrupting their money machine. It's big business to them, right? Not, was it 9 of the 20 richest counties in America surround Washington, D.C. They're making a lot of money off you and I. And they don't want us disrupting that. And that's why they dislike Trump so much, as they have others in history who threaten to disrupt that.
Tom, very well put. There's something that I don't understand. I have trouble wrapping my mind around this. Maybe you can help me. If you don't learn from history, you know the old saying, you're good chance you're going to repeat it. We have watched a great country, and I've been to Venezuela several times on cruise ships. So I spent days. I probably spent 5 days totally in Caracas over a number of years. Back when it was in the 80s, and there were times in which Venezuela was a very wealthy, very well respected country. We've watched under Chavez and Maduro what's happened to Venezuela. We've watched what happened to so many other nations. And why is it we're going down this rabbit hole? Why is it that the American people don't say, wait a minute, Cuba? Look at what Cuba looked like in the 50s. Look at the cars. Look at the streets. Look at Havana. Yeah, I mean, why aren't we getting this?
Well, those Cuba cars from the 50s are still there, aren't they?
I know. And they look like on blocks.
Yeah. So again, this is what the book's about, putting things in perspective. The reality is that power centralizes over time. One of the most dangerous things in history is the human being's drive to control others. But what's important, and I write in this book, and this is why I'm so happy you're having me on at this moment in history, is for us to understand this is not unique. I had a discussion with Steve Bannon a long time ago about, please don't call it the deep state, because it is throughout all of history, this is a normal pattern where bureaucracies form and start taking on a life of their own. De Tocqueville warned America about that when he talked about the British Parliament system versus what was going on in France at the time, which had a monarch. But monarchs and dictators keep very close company and don't have a lot of tentacles into society because they can't trust others, right? But our bureaucracy grows. There's nothing deep about it. All Americans, anyone who's listening to your voice and your great podcast should understand it's right there on the surface. And this is a normal process in history for power to centralize. And those of us fighting for freedom must understand that it's a normal process, but how important it is. This is why Franklin said, if you can keep it. He didn't say, by the way, if your leaders can keep it. He said if you personally have to fight for freedom. And so it's this natural disaster for or consequence and disaster for people to want to keep and control power. That's human nature. To be civilized is to curb that nature a bit. And so what you're seeing is that people get power hungry. Our founders tried to delay that as much as possible with the three branches, but we have to renew the fight to keep it free.
Why aren't people getting this though? But by looking at other countries, how they felt, can't they see we're going down the same path of Cuba, that we're going down the same path of Venezuela, Russia? We have so many legal immigrants in this country that are telling people, jumping up and down, saying, look, I came from a communist country. I know what this looks like. Why aren't we getting this?
Yeah, you asked that question when Milton Friedman appeared before Teddy Kennedy, and Milton Friedman was decrying socialism and Teddy Kennedy's. Milton Friedman said, why do you think you can be any different? And Teddy Kennedy said, well, socialists in the past didn't have me to do what's better. People have fallen through this throughout all of history, but it doesn't arrive in a single moment. It is always given. What did Reagan say? What fascism would come in the name of social justice. Government power is, hey, I'm going to help you out here. And then the power it uses in one place, it uses in another. And so it's the proverbial frog in the warming water versus being thrown in the hot water. People throughout history, politicians have bought votes, and people don't realize the downside of buying votes. Now, it becomes stark at one moment, right? There's many people in Venezuela scared for their lives who realize what has gone wrong. But it is one of the great tragedies of history, the question you ask.
And people, we have to get this, because I'm telling you, people in Cuba, people in Venezuela, people all around the world, Germany, they'll tell you, we didn't think it was going to happen to us, but it's happening to us, people. We have to stop this while we still have time. Tom, me being, as I think you know, a follower of Jesus Christ, born again in 1997. So one of the chapters that really, would pique my curiosity would be America's modern morality and religion. It seems to me that the left has made sure before, and this is part of the communist plank and what Karl Marx and even I think Gramsci wanted to make sure to do, is you have to get rid of God before you can have big government, because either people will look to a benevolent God for their sustenance, or they'll look to government, but not both at the same time. So they have gotten God out of the workplace, the schools, and the government, and that's why they can come in with big daddy government, and people are buying it. Tell people about that particular chapter.
Yeah, I'm glad you raised that. But this, of course, is much older than Karl Marx. He just recognized history.
Right.
Keep in mind that America, when it started, was a farming community, right? There was no big cities. Philadelphia at the time of the Revolution was the biggest city. It had 33,000 people. That's nothing. By the way, London at the time had 600,000-700,000 people. And what a society like that is based on personal responsibility. In my speeches, I often say that I'll give $1,000 to anyone who can show me in the Bible where it says, become a ward of the state and you shall reach salvation. No, right. What it teaches us is to do what? Take care of each other voluntarily, right? Faith, hope, and charity, right? We are to help each other. So, but what happens is that government drives God out of the public square because government officials don't like competition. If you are self-reliant, you have no need for big government programs. If you are charitable to your neighbor and take care of him while he's down, and then put him or her on her feet again and go, there's no point to government. Government's a business. You know that the director of homeless in LA makes more money than the president of the United States. What did Reagan say? Government doesn't solve a problem, it institutionalizes them. So that is a process. But also throughout civilization's history, what you get is the richer a society becomes, the less they care about the afterlife, the more comfortable they are in the current life. And so when you mix these things together, God is driven out. But God has always made a comeback because big government always fails.
Yeah.
And the state always fails. So we're in a difficult moment right now. But nevertheless, there's no majesty in the arrogance of big government. There's only dictatorship and commands. What is so emotionally important and even charming about Christ's message is that you can help others in the most simple ways to make enormous differences in their lives. And that's our calling, right? Our calling isn't to control others, but to be good to others. What a difference. And we are losing that. And there's a reason we're losing that. And I go over it in the book. And as I'm sure you say to people every day, we need to recover it. I hope was what the topic you were asking me to address there.
Yeah, well, I was just asking you to address as you have it in the book, and we're gonna, before I ask you to tell people where they can get the book and where they can contact you, my final question is, your epilogue is what lies ahead. Well, what lies ahead for us? Are there solutions, and can we get out of this mess before we go down?
Well, keep this in mind about America. Prior to our founders, we lived in what was called the age of absolutism. That is absolute control, where kings and queens ruled everything, and we had no say, and poverty was generation to generation. And then America came along and changed everything. No longer was it the divine right of kings, but it was the individual's rights from God. And the whole world has changed since and broken away. It broke away from this centralized control. Now, the way things work in history is that you have strong control, it breaks apart and starts to move back again. And that's where we are today. Individuals can make that enormous difference. That's what is so possible about America, the ability to break hold of centralized power. And so what lies ahead is we will need leaders who understand this dynamic. And leaders have made an enormous difference throughout all of history, even the most simple. Someone like Joan of Arc can rally a nation. George Washington changed all of history. A simple man from the woods of Illinois changed all of history. So, but it requires us to recognize the pattern of what's going on right now and then make a difference. So what lies ahead is stiff challenges, a dangerous world, but the call to leadership as well.
Hey, Tom, I hear you. Thanks for coming back and hanging out with me and telling people, because you have a lot of knowledge and you put a lot of time in to all your books. And please tell people how they can get this book, anything else you'd like to promote, and how they can contact you.
Yeah, I go to tomdell.com, TONDEL.com. You can get the book. Also look for my new podcast where you're going to be on shortly, called Del Beccaro. Don't act scared.
That came as a total surprise.
Yeah, Del Beccaro and Hook, it's called. And we certainly want you to be on so that we can ask you a few questions about what drives you. But tomdell.com, and the podcast is Del Beccaro and Hook. I appreciate you having me on. And
give them the name of the book again.
The Lessons of the American Civilization.
The Lessons of the American Civilization, Mr. Tom Del Beccaro. Tom, thanks for coming on, and God bless, and keep up the great fight. As I always say, because they're trying, don't let them grind you down.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Mr. Tom Del Beccaro, there you have it. I want to thank Tom Del Beccaro for coming back and telling us what America is supposed to be, what America used to be, and where America is heading if we don't put the brakes on this attempted communist takeover of our nation. And understanding the civilization, not only of America, but the civilization of other nations is very important, people, for us to understand what happened to them is in the process of happening to us. We've got to stop this, put our foot down. No way, no shape, no how, communism, not on our watch. So thank you very much, Tom. This podcast is available at radioinfluence.com or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Hope you subscribe to it, leave a rating and a review, and be sure to tell your friends about the show. The video version is available at YouTube, Rumble, Conservative Television of America, the God Family and Country Television Network, and the Rose Unplugged Media Network. Hit that subscribe button so you'll be notified when the videos air. And once again, be sure to tell everybody about the show. Finally, there is an audio version, 175 or more high-profile guests who have been on this program. You can find that at radioinfluence.com. The likes of Monica Crowley, Ben Carson, Claire Lopez, Carrie Lake, Will Witt, Carol Swain, Tom Holman, Kevin Sorbo. The list goes on and on. I could go on and on and on. It's Judge Janine Pirro, Ian Pryor. Check it out. I'm sure you'll find some shows there that you would like to hear. Well, that's it for now, everyone. So until the next time, this is your host, Gary Benford, saying God bless you, God bless your families, and God bless America.